Co is a Latin prefix that generally means with, together, and we see it daily in such words as co-star, co-founder, co-owner, and co-worker. But many other co-words aren't quite so easy to understand when you first encounter them. Coalesce, to come together, to form one group or mass. 3 local civic groups have recently coalesced to form a single organization, believing it will result in more effective campaigns. Social movements are often said to coalesce when groups with somewhat different interests realize how much they have in common. Some physicists believe that planets coalesced not from space rocks, but from icy clouds of cosmic dust. Some people even study how languages coalesce. For example, the fairly new language Afrikaans, a mixture of Dutch and native languages spoken in South Africa, which only really solidified about 150 years ago. Cogeneration, the production of electricity using waste heat, as in steam, from an industrial process, or the use of steam from electric power generation as a source of heat. With its new cogeneration system, the company reports converting over 65% of the energy in natural gas to electricity, making this the most efficient power plant ever built. Cogeneration is basically the production of energy and usable heat, generally in the form of steam and hot water, in the same plant, usually by capturing heat that in older plants used to be simply wasted. It's one of the principal ways in which countries intend to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions so as to slow climate change. Cogeneration plants are often small, and the fuels used in them are varied. Lumber mills, for instance, can operate their own cogeneration plants, feeding them with wood scraps and sawdust, and wastewater treatment plants generate gas that can likewise be used as a source of energy. Since it's hard to move heat long distances, cogeneration is most efficient when the heat can be used nearby. Though the general public today knows little about cogeneration, more and more of us will be benefiting from it in the coming years. Codependency, a psychological condition or a relationship in which a person is controlled or manipulated by someone affected with a condition, such as alcohol or drug addiction. She never knew what codependency was until her daughter took up with a mean, abusive alcoholic and refused to leave him. Dependency on addictive substances has been known for centuries, but the concept of codependency got its name only as recently as 1979. For many of us, codependency isn't easy to understand. We may keep asking why doesn't she just leave him, and find it hard to accept the answers we get. Codependents usually don't share their partner's addiction, but their lives tend to be taken over with the burden of caring for and protecting the spouse or partner. In recent years, people have started claiming that all kinds of conditions, anorexia, overeating, gambling, fear of intimacy, etc., can result in codependency. Many experts think all of this has gone too far. Still, almost everyone agrees that spouses of alcoholics and drug addicts face unique difficulties and should look for support and advice anywhere they can find it. Cohesion. 1. The action or state of sticking together. 2. Molecular attraction, by which the particles of a body are united throughout the mass. The party's greatest strength was its cohesion and discipline, and on bill after bill that year not a single member voted with the other party. Cohesion is one of the noun forms of cohere, the others are cohesiveness and coherence, each of which has a slightly different meaning. Coherence is often used to describe a person's speech or writing. An incoherent talk or blog post is one that doesn't hang together, and if the police pick up someone who they describe as incoherent, it means he or she isn't making sense. But to describe a group or team that always sticks together, you would use cohesive, not coherent. And the words you'd use in chemistry class to describe the way molecules hang together, for example, the way water forms into beads and drops, are cohesion, cohesive, and cohesiveness. Syn is a Greek and Latin prefix meaning together or at the same time. So, in sync, short for in synchronization, means together in time. And a synonym is a word that can be considered together with another word since it has the same meaning. Syntax, the way in which words are put together to form phrases, clauses, or sentences. The president's critics complain about his odd and confusing syntax when he speaks in public. Syntax is basically about what word comes before and after another word. In other words, it's part of the larger subject of grammar. Syntax is often an issue in poetry, and it's usually discussed in connection with diction, that is, the poet's choice of words. So, for example, your English professor might point out the syntactic difference between whose woods these are I think I know and I think I know whose woods these are, whereas if the discussion was about diction instead, the question might be about the choice of woods rather than land, or think rather than bet. Synthesize, to make something by combining different things. From all the proposals put in front of us, we were asked to synthesize a plan that could get the support of the whole group. Synthesize is a very common word in chemistry, since chemists are constantly synthesizing new compounds, that is, synthetic compounds, including drugs and industrial chemicals. It's also often used when talking about writing. Non-fiction writers must often synthesize large amounts of material from many sources to produce a book, which represents a synthesis of the important materials. An electronic synthesizer creates new sounds, which may imitate the sounds of acoustic instruments, by generating different basic tones and then manipulating and merging them together with others. Synergy, the increased effectiveness that results when two or more people or businesses work together. With the first company's importance in print media and the second's success on the web, everyone was convinced that the merger would result in an awesome synergy. An old saying, "the whole is greater than the sum of its parts," expresses the basic meaning of synergy. The word is sometimes used in a purely physical sense, especially when talking about drugs. Sometimes a cocktail of drugs may be more effective than the sum of the effectiveness of each of the separate drugs. But the word is best known in the world of business. The notion that, when the right two companies merge, they'll produce a profitable synergy seemed exciting in the 1990s, when synergy became a trendy buzzword, even though it's actually been around since the 17th century. The idea of synergy was one factor in what became a merger mania. Unfortunately, business synergy often turned out to be harder to achieve than to imagine. Syndrome, a group of signs and symptoms that occur together and characterize a particular abnormality or condition. When there is no trembling, the most obvious symptom of Parkinson's disease, most doctors fail to recognize the Parkinson's syndrome. Combining its two Greek roots, syndrome means basically running together. So when diagnosing a condition or disease, doctors tend to look for a group of symptoms existing together. As long as a set of symptoms remains mysterious, it may be referred to as a specific syndrome. But if that name is used for a while, it may become the condition's permanent name, even after an underlying cause has been found. So today, we have Down syndrome, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, Asperger's syndrome, carpal tunnel syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, Tourette's syndrome, sick building syndrome, and many more. And since mental conditions often turn out to have physical causes, syndrome is used in psychology as well as in medicine.